Hi, and welcome to Couch Conversations Beyond the Textbook, where real talk meets real life in the world of mental health. We're your hosts, Abby and Bethany, two therapists who have been through the textbooks and are entering the trenches. This is a space where we unpack what they didn't teach you in grad school, the messy, the meaningful, and the moments that shape us as professionals and people. So grab a seat on the couch and let's dive in. Please note that the content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of a qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding your mental health or medical condition. The views and opinions expressed by hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of any organizations or professionals they may be affiliated with. If you are in crisis, or if you think you may have a mental health emergency, please call 911 or contact a local mental health crisis line or emergency service in your area.
Hi everyone, welcome to Couch Conversations Beyond the Textbook. I'm Abby.
And I'm Bethany.
And we're excited to start this podcast.
So, we'll start by talking about why we're starting the podcast, or what our podcast is going to be about, so that all of you listeners can have a better idea of why we're here and what brought us to this point. So, do you want to start off with your side of things?
Sure. So, it started in our internship. We were sitting in my office laughing, like we do, and started talking about how fun it would be to do a podcast, and some of the practicum students came in and we're talking about how they were looking for a podcast when they started grad school, about what they were looking, what they could expect and all that, and they couldn't find anything. So we're like, well, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think I've always thought it would be fun to start a podcast, but I never really knew what until we were sitting in your office one day. And I think even looking back at my time in grad school, I had always wished that there was something relatable that I could listen to that didn't feel like I was reading from a textbook. Because I think there's a lot of podcasts out there that feel like you're reading from a textbook. It's boring, and then I lose interest quickly. So the goal would be that people don't lose interest in us quickly.
Yeah, and we have fun with it. And I think for me, going back to school, because you went right after high school or college, right? Mm-hmm. And I actually didn't go get my bachelor's until I was almost 40. So the whole journey was very overwhelming for me. And as we were going through grad school and we were learning our skills and things, there was a lot of things where I was like, I don't know that this is right for me because I can't just sit still. Mm-hmm. Or, I'm really struggling not asking questions. And so it would have been really helpful for me to have somebody who could tell me, okay, that's what's tangible and what I am going to continue to use and what is for educational purposes.
Yeah, I think that as you're going through grad school, it feels very intense. And then once you put it into practice, of course it's intense, but there's things that you're taught in grad school that don't necessarily look the same in practice, which is kind of part of our goal of starting this podcast, of just normalizing the experience of going from the classroom to real life work with other people and sitting with clients and hearing their stories. So, Abby, tell us about your journey to grad school. Well, where are you at now? Well,
what's going on since we've graduated?
Yeah, when did you graduate?
So, what's graduated in May with our MA. And right now I am just enjoying my summer with my kids. Looking to start working in August. And there are a few options out there that I'm not sure which way I'm going to go. But to get there, it's a very long journey. Like I said, I just turned 45. It's a long journey. But I knew that I should be a counselor when I was in junior high. I knew that was kind of my calling. Diagnosed with ADHD when I was 8. So I struggled with school. I was a pretty C student. And so when I tried to go to college right out of high school, it was not something for me. It was really hard. I dropped out. And then, kind of to make a long story short, and I'm sure we'll get into all this stuff later, but my mom passed away in 7 years ago, so what would that be? 18. My mom passed away in 2018. And so right after that, my husband, about a few months after I graduated, or a few months after my mom died, my husband told me to go take a day or a weekend, go get a hotel, and just spend some time by myself processing everything that we went through, because she had cancer. It was a really long, hard journey that I never really processed. And in that process of processing, I heard the Lord say to me, you need to go back to school. You're going to go and you are going to become a counselor, and you are not going to use what you just went through with your mom, but you're going to use everything you went through as a child and an adolescent and a teenager. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to bite this bullet and be obedient. And I fought it for about 2 months. And finally I was like, all right, the Lord was just hitting me over the head. With signs that, like, you know, every commercial on the radio was about online school. And I was reading this book by Bianca Olthoffen, and she talked about starting your career later in life. And I was like, all right.
Yeah.
So
the signs were there.
So I went ahead and enrolled online.
So for you, that started with starting your undergrad online.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that, because that's a little different than some people's experiences.
My undergrad online was really weird. So I went to Liberty University online, and I never met a single professor. I never met another classmate. Did everything online. Didn't have any Zoom calls. Nothing. It was just, here's your assignments for the week. Here's what you need to read. Here's when it's due. So that was interesting. And so my kids were just getting into activities and stuff, so it was a real challenge to balance everything. But I ended up graduating with my undergrad degree in Christian counseling in 2021, and then I took a year. I was going to go to Northwestern, and 2 weeks before we were supposed to start, I decided I didn't want to spend $90,000, and Grace, where we met, was higher ranked and a better program. So I took that year off and started grad school in 2023.
That's so interesting. Even as you're telling it, I didn't know that you were going to go somewhere else. Yeah. If you haven't picked up on it, we both went to Grace College for our master's in clinical mental health counseling. We both just graduated in May, but we both have different stories as to how we got there. So that's interesting.
And Grace is a very well regarded school in this profession. So
yeah, definitely hard though. The journey's hard.
The journey's hard.
For sure.
And
so you were in school for like 7 years straight.
Yes.
Or almost 8 years.
Yes. Well, no, I'm sorry. It was almost 7.
Okay, almost 7.
The one thing that I really appreciated about Grace is getting to know our classmates. I don't think I could have done it without that.
Yeah. So something about the Grace program is that it is also online.
Yes.
However, every year, once a year, there's what they call a residency, which is like an intensive learning week where we're all on Grace's campus. Doing all the learning, all the skills.
We get like almost a semester's worth, don't we, of education in a week.
Yes. And it's wildly uncomfortable.
Yes. But we bond hard. We bond hard over that week.
Yes. And then we have online classes throughout the sessions. With
Zoom meetings.
Yep.
Anywhere from 2 times a session to 4 or 5.
Yeah. And then for those listening, if you don't know anything about grad school or you're curious about at least a counseling master's I can speak to, the way that Grace's program ran is they have a few different setups for ways that you can work through the program. Like I said, I think we were both on a little bit different tracks but ended at the same time. But you'll do a practicum, which is 1 16-week semester, and then you'll do an internship, which is 2 16-week semesters, where you're working with clients. But before you do that, you're taking classes, and one of the classes is called Counseling Skills, where you learn all the nitty-gritty of counseling, the basics.
It's the most awkward class, but it's also the most beneficial class, I think.
Yeah.
It was in my experience. It was so awkward.
Yeah. But I think it was the first time that you're really taking what you're learning and trying to put it into words, basically. Yeah. And to work with clients, which is your client during that class is just a classmate that you have. But definitely pushes you, and you learn a lot in that semester.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I remember when we started that class in residency, and they were like, just make up stories. Don't use your real life stuff. Mm-hmm. And we would try to make up stories, and it was just hilarious. We couldn't do it. Yeah. Just laughed at each other. So it ended up being like we talked about real life stuff, and parts of it were kind of therapeutic for us.
Yeah, yeah. So you're working with other students, and also you're telling them your story in some capacity. I mean, they asked us not to go say
trauma.
Say anything crazy, but which makes sense because we're all new students trying to figure this out with our active listening skills. Probably didn't have the skills for handling trauma at that point.
No,
but,
for sure.
Definitely an interesting class, and the track for the grad program. It's hard, but I do feel like they really excel in making good counselors. Yeah. Because there are some not so good counselors out there from stories I've heard. So I think that's important to
definitely felt prepared.
Yeah, for sure.
So what's your story?
So I went to Grace for my undergrad. And so going into my undergrad at 18, you choose a career that you want to be in for the rest of your life, or that you think you want to be in for the rest of your life. And I always thought, I'm going to be a nurse. Everyone had told me, you'd be a great nurse. You have a great personality. You care about people, the helping professions, Yeah. And so I was going into undergrad, nursing major, ready to go. I also played softball in college, so that was just an added, benefit of going to Grace, is that it was a smaller school. I could continue to play the sport that I loved, which provided me a lot of opportunities. But all that to say, I began experiencing a lot of anxiety before going into undergrad. And I thought maybe it's because I'm moving, 4 hours away from home, whatever it might be. And then as I, thought about it, prayed about it, I realized I am not going to be a nurse. I wasn't made to be a nurse. I would watch Grey's Anatomy and be grossed out. I'm like, I don't think I can do that. I don't want to change old people's diapers. That just wasn't the caring, the hands-on caring that does. There's nothing wrong. We love our nurses, and I have a lot of family members who are nurses, but
for sure,
I just was like, I don't think I'm that girl. And so I had talked to my mom about it, and I was just like, I'm just really not sure what I want to do, what direction I want to go in, but I know that I care about people, and I want to help people in some capacity. And so we just began to research different professions, things like that. And when I landed on counseling, I had just done some research, and I was like, this really resonates with me. I feel like growing up I had been a friend that was the listener. And I was like, I think I really could see myself doing this in practice one day, which of course, as you learn in grad school, counseling is a lot more than just listening and things like that. But at the time, that's what I knew. And so it just made me feel a lot more settled when I settled into that. And I felt a lot of passion spark inside of me of what the future could hold in this profession, or we like to call it a calling, because it doesn't always just feel like a job. It feels like something that you're called to. And so there I was, undergrad. I did my undergrad in counseling, and then I minored in sports psychology, which was amazing. I love working with athletes. I know that's something that we bond over, but and then I played softball, did my undergrad, and I didn't actually ever think I would end up staying at Grace. I thought, in 4 years, and I'm done. I was looking at schools in Tennessee, looking at schools back in Michigan, which is where I'm from. Then, lo and behold, I met my husband, and he's from Indiana. And then an opportunity came up where I could be a graduate assistant for our softball team at Grace, which helped to pay for my master's, which was pretty big. I was looking at grad assistant positions at other schools, but this just kind of worked out. It was like the Lord had opened that door for me, and it just felt like an easy yes at the time. Not that it was an easy road, but an easy yes at the time, looking at the benefits of it. Yeah. So I stayed for the 2 years, and that was my first 2 years of grad school. I was a graduate assistant, so basically like an assistant coach for the team. And I really enjoyed it. And then my last year of grad school got a little crazy because the coaches of the softball team left. And again, the Lord had opened the door, and our athletic director asked me if I would be willing to be an interim head coach. Well, during your last year of grad school, you're also in your internship.
Brave call.
Yeah, I only got through it because of the people that I surrounded myself with, and I can say that so honestly, and the support system that I had behind me. But I said yes, and it felt like a crazy yes, and
it was a little bit of a crazy yes.
It was a crazy yes, but you know what? Crazy. It was a good crazy. I learned so much this past year about myself, about obviously counseling, working with clients, how coaching connects with people, and how we, So all of that to say, I finished my internship and coaching. It was just a 1-year position. Loved it. Loved the girls. And now I'm graduated in May. I'm working at a private practice, the same one that I interned at, and just enjoying it, and now preparing for my first baby, my first child. So we've got a lot going on. Life never seems to slow down.
So exciting.
Yeah.
So exciting. As a coach and counselor at the same school, talk a little bit about how you held those two hats.
Yeah, there were difficulties with it. I think, so throughout my internship, I started at the private practice, but eventually had to add another site because I wasn't getting the hours that I needed, and I was driving almost like 50 minutes to and from almost every day for to go from seeing clients, then changing really quick, and then driving to practice, to coach a practice, and all of that. And so ended up adding a second site at the Grace Counseling Center, and that is where we met, or not met, but really connected, became friends.
Yep.
Because you were at the Grace Counseling Center for your internship, and really, really, I hold that time as like very precious in my heart, because I loved working with the college age, and I think coaching showed me that, but then working in the counseling center solidified it. Like, I love this age. College is such a cool time that you're just figuring out life and developing in very quick ways, and asking hard questions, and there's a lot of hard but a lot of good that happens in college.
And college age kids are in that place where they want to hear. They want to hear what you have to say, whereas not all high school and junior high age kids, but they're kind of learning themselves and fighting against what they're hearing and what people are trying to help them with. Yeah,
and even that transition of, for most college students, the independence of leaving home, and there's just something so profound about
getting their own identity.
Learning about yourself and who you are during that time, or who you think you are at that time.
Yes.
But with coaching, for me, I think it just gave me the opportunity to see athletes in a different way. Like, I had, athletes, of course, struggle with mental health. There's a lot of pressure in athletics, and I had felt that throughout college. I had gone to the counseling center personally throughout college because of struggles that I was having with some anxiety, just a lot of chaos, things like that. And so, but coaching, it was because of the experience that I had as an athlete, I felt like I could really invest in a different way than what most coaches do, because I had more of the mental health passion or side of things, where I could understand the girls in a way that some coaches can't. And that's not to say that coaches who don't have the mental side of things are bad, but it can be hard when, it's a lot. It can be a lot to carry. On both ends, for sure. So it was a really good experience. I feel like I grew a lot and shared a lot of life changes with the girls too. So
announcing your pregnancy was pretty exciting with that.
With that role. Exciting. And it'll be exciting to get to see them throughout the fall and see them thrive, and just get to go back and be in a different role now with them than what I was before.
That's awesome.
So tell me about your passion for athletes? Because I think you came by it maybe a little differently.
I did. I also enjoy working with athletes and did so at both my practicum. I did both my practicum and internship at the same site, at the Grace Counseling Center, and worked with a lot of the student athletes. And I myself was an athlete. Everybody in my family, we were all athletes. I have athletes as children, and I didn't continue sports into college. I had the opportunity and chose not to, and that was something I regretted for a really long time, because it took me a really long time, and I struggled really hard with what is my identity if I'm not playing sports. And then as I got older, I still did recreational sports and was on different recreational softball teams, volleyball teams. I ended up age of like 38 tearing my ACL. And there were a lot of complications with that. I tore everything in my knee and fractured my femur, all in the same injury, and it kind of knocked me out. I can't play sports anymore. And so there was a lot of struggles there. And so I just have a real passion for, kind of feel like athletes are ignored when it comes to mental health, because exercise is such a big part of keeping your mental health stable. People, I feel like they kind of are assumed that they're in a good place, when really the transition from high school sports to college sports is so great. And the struggle, you can be an absolute star in high school, and then you get to college and you're sitting the bench, and that in and of itself can be really difficult. So there's just a lot of different dynamics that come into play for athletes, I feel like, that get kind of washed over.
For sure.
So I just have a lot of passion for athletes.
Yeah.
I see them.
Yeah, and I think for those of you who are considering going into grad school or thinking, like, what could this be like, whether that be through the counseling route or the social work route, which is something we'll talk about in later episodes, I think you'll discover things that you're passionate about, certain groups that you really enjoy, kind of your niche in the as a therapist in the counseling world. Not that you can't differ from it, but there are certain things that I think draw certain counselors more than what others, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes, I love all my clients. They're not all athletes. Every client has something different that they bring to the table, and there's something different you connect on. But it was just Dr. Wildison. Shout out to Dr. Wildison. She was one of our professors, one of my favorite professors. She's a sports counselor, sports psychologist, and I just learned so much from her in that too. And that, when I didn't even know that was an option, that you could specialize in something like that. So when she started talking about that, it kind of just perked my ears, and something I just kind of dove into.
Yeah, dive in head first.
Yeah, you really do. You don't really have much of an option.
No,
you feel so unprepared always.
Yeah, I feel like we'll have to do an episode on like not on our first client, but the experience that we had with our first client, because obviously, you know, it's a whole new world.
I feel bad for that client. I do. Yeah. Still, I'm like, man, she was a guinea pig.
Yeah. But you did it, and they don't know any better.
She had that client had no idea, none.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the counseling, profession or calling, and kind of what makes you passionate about counseling. What have you found throughout grad school that you've loved? What are things that you might struggle with still? Things like that.
Why don't you go first?
Okay, I'll go first. You're like, don't put me on the hot seat.
I'm talking like a lot. It's your turn.
Well, like I said, counseling, it drew me I was drawn to counseling because I wanted to help people.
Yeah.
You learn very quickly in grad school that helping people in this capacity is a lot different than just listening, which obviously listening is a very important part. But you just learn quickly that the way that you help your friends is a lot different than how you're helping clients. But honestly, just the privilege to get to step into somebody's story, and the privilege to have someone, like some of your clients are telling you things that they've never told anyone ever. Yeah. And you're the person that gets the privilege to walk with them through that. I think that there's something so sacred about that.
Agreed.
And just the counseling relationship is very profound, and our goal is to only be a part of their story for a short time.
Yeah.
And, they say when you're coming into grad school, you're working yourself out of a job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's obviously the goal. Like, you want to see every client grow enough that they don't need you.
Yeah.
And we know that they don't need us.
Mm-hmm.
But helping them see that themselves and have the courage to step out on their own and work through hard things on their own and learn how to do that. I just think that there's something so beautiful about that relationship. And I know a lot of people have different experiences with different therapists, and every therapist is wired differently.
Yeah.
And that's something we'll probably talk about later too, different theoretical orientations and all of that fun stuff. But it all kind of comes together as one therapist, and each person's different. But that is really what I love about counseling, is just the people and getting to work with people, and just the privilege that it is to spend time with them in that 53-minute session, get to watch them hopefully grow, and step out and take even just sometimes the courageous act of signing up for counseling.
Yes. Yeah.
Is huge. And so getting to celebrate them in that and challenge them in ways that maybe they haven't been before. I would say I probably challenge my clients in ways that I don't challenge my friends, or different things.
Or myself.
Like that. Or myself, yeah. It's like sometimes I'll be sitting in a session and I'll say something that I'm like, I should really do that myself. I'm like, that was really good, Bethany. I should do that myself. Yeah. Like, oh, that coping skill? Yeah, I should use that.
I should probably work on that one too.
But that's kind of what I've loved about learning counseling.
Yeah.
And just, obviously, grad school's hard and uncomfortable, but you learn so much in that time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, I'm just going to echo a lot of what you said. I was also the friend that everyone kind of came to for advice, which is one of the things that I think shocked me the most about counseling is it's not advice giving. And but that is something that has stuck with me. Like I really have to make sure I'm not giving advice when I'm sitting in that chair, because it's not advice giving. We're not here to fix your problems.
I don't want to be responsible for the
what
decision that you made.
Yes, 100%. But I think I agree. Like, it is such an honor to be the person who gets to watch that growth, to be able to have a space where people can cry and yell and be mad. That safe space, it is such an honor to hold that for other people. And like you said, it's sacred. Like it is something that you almost can't put into words. It's a feeling. Like, you just feel so honored to sit in that space with people, and all people. It doesn't, like, there's just so many, like, the clients vary so much and why they're there and their background and who they are, and you just meet this vast array of humanity. And it is just an honor to be able to be the person that is sitting there with them and their heart and in their yuck. So that is just, I just love that about counseling. I remember having clients where after our last session, when you say, you've worked me out of this job, like, you reflect back on all the work that they've done with them, and you see that big smile on their face, and they see it in themselves, and you shut that door after they walk out. I have cried many tears over, I'm not going to get to see that wedding, or like, because you develop such a rapport and you care so much about your clients.
Yeah.
And that is something that I don't think is talked about a lot either, is that cutoff is really hard.
Yeah.
And as much as I love it, because it's a celebration, it is also, I think, on our end, probably a little bit harder. Because it's such a mix of feelings. And something I learned this year in internship was that, we were created to be able to feel more than one feeling at a time. And so it's such a high and a low at the same time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that cutoff is something any therapist can relate to, of just, it feels weird when a client walks out your door for the last time or ends up no-showing or something like that. or not coming back, and you feel like you're left at, you know, a dead end where you're just like, what's going to happen in their life? And that can feel really weird to cope with sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. You've just walked through so much with this person. You know so much about them. You know their life, you know their story, you've walked through it, and then it just is done.
Yeah.
You don't get to know anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of the harder parts about counseling that, like you said, is talked about less than other aspects, for sure.
It's hard, but it's so beautiful at the same time. Mm-hmm. Because you don't have to know. You don't need to know, because you know you did the work with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot to this profession or this calling.
So much.
And a lot to grad school and everything like that, you know, you learn and then you unlearn in the real world. I think that's so one of the biggest things is grad school, so necessary to prepare you for this field.
Yes.
But there's a lot of things that you learn in the hands-on work that you just can't get from the textbooks or from the PowerPoints or whatever it might be.
Yeah. What would you say would be something, just if you had to pick one thing that you learned in grad school that you were surprised was not as big of a deal when you sat down in that chair?
That's a good question. I think that going into grad school, even now a little bit, because I'm not pretending to be, you know, some seasoned professional. I just graduated in May. Like, I am waiting on my associate license to come through. And I passed that, and we both passed the NCE.
Yeah, we did.
But, so neither of us are pretending to be seasoned pros by any means.
Right.
But
I haven't even started.
You know, and that's okay. You're taking the summer with your kids.
That's right.
There's importance in rest too for you, and you had a lot more school in a different season of life than most people would, and so that looks a lot different for you. I feel like I had to validate.
Yeah, thank you for validating me right now. I appreciate that.
You know, I wondered when we were starting a counseling podcast. I was like, I feel like we're just gonna like
encourage and validate, like counsel each other. It's in your bones.
Gotta make sure these counseling skills are coming up. All the things. Anyway, as I was saying, my biggest fear, I think, was self-disclosure and what that looked like in the counseling room. I think obviously you still have to be careful with it in the real world. But I think that there was so much fear for me surrounding self-disclosure with clients. And I still don't self-disclose often. But I think that it was like such I can never do this. And then I'd have a client where I'm like, and there's a way to go about self-disclosure where you're like, am I doing this for me or am I doing this for the client? Like, is this going to help me? Because I'm like, I relate to you on this because it helps me, or is it helping the client?
Right.
And so thinking through that, obviously, before you self-disclose, and you're not self-disclosing super personal, you know, whatever, information or harmful things to the client, whatever. Right. But I think in grad school, I was just like, this client cannot know anything about me. And like they, you know, but clients will ask.
Yes,
like
they
you
will.
get to the real world and working with clients, and they're going to ask you if you're married. They're going to ask you if you have kids. Yeah. They're going to look up your Facebook profile,
yes,
apparently.
They are. Apparently.
And then ask you about it.
Yeah.
And you're going to freak out a little bit internally and think, well, how do I respond to this? But I think that it makes you a real person to them. Like,
there's a level of connection in self-disclosure.
Yeah. And like, I mean, like I said, we could have a whole episode on self-disclosure,
and we probably will.
Maybe at some point we will. We'll put it on the list. You'll just have to keep tuning in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there's obviously a line with that. And like I said, there's wisdom and discernment to be had in that. But I would say that was one of the biggest differences from like grad school, what we learned, to then being in practice of like, no, like clients are going to ask you questions and you're going to have to figure out how to like, where that line is, what is appropriate, what, you know, things like that.
It's going to be different for different populations.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I think something that I do with my intakes is after the intake, I say, is there any questions you have for me? There's not much that I won't there's not much that I feel like I have to hold back.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how I say it, but I will, if you cross the line, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Is basically kind of a conversation I have with my clients. Because I tend to self-disclose easily.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something I have to watch, is making sure I let them know, like, you can ask me questions.
Yeah.
I just may not answer them all.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much how I say it to them. Like, ask me, do you want to know if I'm married? Yeah, I'm married. I wear a ring. You're going to see it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I have a picture of my family in my office. But that's easy to do with college age.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah.
What would you say is the biggest difference that you've noticed from grad school to practice? And
something that I was really nervous about, as you can probably tell, I'm fidgety. And so I was really, really nervous about, they really emphasized sitting still.
yes.
And that stuck out to me because I knew it was going to be an issue.
Yeah.
And I learned that it's really not that big of a deal. And I even bring it up with my clients. And I'm like, I have a lot of fidgets in my office.
Yeah.
And I will say during intake, you see, I have a lot of fidgets. I'm a very fidgety person. If you need a fidget to help calm yourself down or to help you focus, please grab one. I'll probably have one.
Right. Yeah, and I'm sure that type of, honesty on your part helps the client know, oh gosh, she is a real person.
Yeah.
Like, she also, is fidgety, and I definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
The stiffness that
Yes.
it seems like you have to be as a therapist is hard.
What's what they...
And it's...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not really realistic.
No.
And that kind of comes off as stiff to your clients, in
Right.
my experience.
Same.
Of if you're going to be stiff and proper...
It's going to be harder to open up.
Yeah, and then your client, that might come across negatively to your client. Or could come across negatively. Even just sitting in, positions that aren't just,
doing this?
Yeah.
I have a real hard time not doing this in
yes.
session.
I do that too. I'll play with
But
my
I'm listening.
earrings. Or,
yeah.
But I think especially once you've built a good relationship with a client, then it's just, they're not going to...
Yeah.
They don't... Those kind of things, it just makes the process more natural, I think. But who knows? I guess I've never asked what their experience with me is, but I guess, I don't know.
Our supervisor, Grace, said to me once that I was relaxed but not unprofessional. And that, I loved hearing that. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to have a relaxed environment.
Right.
But
yeah,
there is a fine line there.
For sure. So.
Yeah.
How should we wrap?
Well, what are some things that you think that we'll be talking about in podcasts?
There's a lot.
There's a lot. What are some things that we've talked about
ideas.
so far?
So, like we said, one of the things that I'm excited to talk about is the theoretical orientations, what that looks like. It's a little different for counseling versus social work. No, I don't. But I think that will be fun to talk about. Hopefully we'll get some guests on our podcast.
I would love that.
I would love it. Because I specialized in one theoretical orientation. You specialized in one. Yep. So we don't...
And they're different.
They're all different. There's many different things that you can kind of make your
it's
niche.
Overwhelming.
Yeah. So I'm excited to talk about that. That'll look a little different. Like I said, social work and counseling I think will be exciting to talk about.
Identity. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The difference and the similarities and what that looks like. Maybe we'll have to get a social worker on here to talk about.
We'll have to try.
Talk about that. We'll have to try.
I know a few.
Yeah.
I am excited to talk about imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Imposter syndrome, that's one that is... In fact, I didn't really even know what it was before grad school, so...
Yeah.
That one is loaded.
Yeah. Not even sure I'm through it yet.
Yeah.
Most days.
But we're still living it, so I think that's kind of why I'm excited to talk about it.
But it's very real in grad school. Still real in the real world, too.
Yes. I think talking about our different experiences of what it was like, coming out of college and being young and going through grad school and then being a mother of two and married and in a very different phase of life. I think that's going to be good, hopefully, for listeners that we have, because it's very different experiences.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing in grad school that you see, especially in a program like ours, is that there wasn't one person that had the same story
No.
of how they got there.
Yeah.
And everybody's story was different. And
they were so fun to hear.
So fun to hear. And I think that maybe in the future we can get some people on here to tell their story.
Would love it.
That would be relatable for them. But there's just so much that I think we can talk about that is relatable and important for people to hear.
Yeah. And I want to hear what people wanted to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do listeners want to hear us talk about?
Right.
But pretty open.
Yeah, that's kind of the gist of what this couch conversations beyond the textbook.
Chair conversation.
Chair conversation. We're going to have to get a couch at some point.
I know.
But
budget problems.
That's definitely make sure to like and subscribe.
Right? Yes, please.
Get us a couch to have our conversations
That's
on.
right. That's right.
And we'll keep going beyond the textbook.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right.
Well, thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out with us on Couch Conversations Beyond the Textbook. If today's episode resonated with you, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone you think can relate. Keep showing up, keep learning, and remember, the best growth doesn't always come from a textbook. See you next time.